G'day there viewers, thought I'd do a bit of a follow-up on my earlier video about my fridge in regard to how well that worked. So we did a 3-month holiday earlier this year. Left Brisbane in the pretty much the height of summer, although it did get a bit warmer after we left, end of January, and we took off and went to Tasmania via New South Wales and Canberra and down through Victoria, and then we caught the ferry across to Tassie with the caravan. And that was our first long time away in the van. We've done lots of weekends and 3 or 4 day things, but we hadn't done any, significant long trips. And of course, summer was going to be the big test for how the fridge worked. I did do some further mods to the fridge. So I talked in the last video about the need for, that decent wiring short to maintain the voltage and current to the heater element. Now, that was critically important to make this thing work properly, and that worked. I didn't have any troubles. The fridge was getting quite cold. A friend of mine had told me about another gadget you could get, a thermostat. Now, one of the problems with the fridge, these fridges, is they do not have any thermal control at all when they're on DC. When you're towing and you're running it on DC, the thermostat in the fridge does nothing. So this fridge is a Dometic 2553, I think it is, 3-way, so gas, 240 and 12 volt DC. And the thermostat that's built into the fridge works in mains, and it works under gas operation. And I found the fridge works great, both of those, no problems at all, didn't have any dramas. And the thermostat maintains a fairly good temperature. Not that you'd know, because you've got no way to judge what the fridge temperature is. Anyway, a friend of mine told me about this little module that you could get that has a, not only does it tell you what the temperature of the fridge is, but it will also allow you to control the fridge with that thermostat using the temperature readings that you're getting from the thermostat itself. So I'll just give you a quick look at that. So here's the fridge, which you may remember, it's a Dometic 2553, I think. So, and I did find out this is a tropical rated, what they call a tropical rated fridge, and you'll see down here at 12 volts, this is rated at 175 watts, 195 watts at 240 volts, 175 watts. Now, normally these are a 125. A standard fridge that's not thermal rated is, I believe, is about a 125 watts. So this is a 175. It's got better performance in tropical climates. Now, this is what I've added, is this little Chinese microcomputer temperature controller, they call it. You'll see them on eBay. This is just the ambient temperature. The fridge isn't going, so currently the date's 24.9. And with this you get, I just cut a hole in here, mounted it into the top of the fridge here, adjacent to the selector. So the 12 volts now is fed through the switch via this thermostat controller down to the relay that I put in, that you saw in the last video. So this was inserted later, and the idea is this will now maintain I've got the temperature set at 2.4, so so that's ambient, that's its set temperature, and that will maintain that, give or take a degree. I think I've got it, you can set the cut in and cut out temperatures, so that's its cut in, it cuts out at 2.4, cuts in at, well, hang on, it probably tells me 2.4, no it doesn't. Okay, so you can set on this a cut in, cut out, so when it reaches 2.4 it stops, switches off the 12 volts to the heater element. When it gets to 4.1 or something, I can't remember what I've set that to, it will switch the power back on to start the element again. So the fridge will just sit there and oscillate up and down. So this is the temperature sensor that comes with this. I just drilled a hole in the top of the cabinet up here dropped it down through and into here. So it's just monitoring the ambient temperature in the fridge. So the good news about all this was, this worked. It worked really well. At the end of January, we had high mid-30s here in Brisbane, and the fridge did a great job. So before I left, I put new insulation. There was somebody renovating up around the corner, and they were throwing out all their insulation bats and putting something else in. So I grabbed those and I repacked all around the sides and the top of the fridge with new bats to make sure that was well insulated. And you can't do much on the back. And as I said, I'd fitted this because once I'd fixed the 12 volts, the fridge maintained temperature as it should do. And in fact, it got too efficient and got down to well into the minuses. If you were driving for more than an hour, the fridge, and you'd already had the fridge at quite cool before you took off. You have been running it on mains power. The fridge would go. Because it was running continuously. It would drive it right down into minus 10, minus 15, and freeze everything. So it then became necessary to fit this. Really, I guess the thing's designed to have very inefficient wiring, perhaps. But anyway, this is a much better. And I also know then if the fridge, like if the gas goes out, the gas jet, because it's high wind, and we had that happen a couple of times, then the digital display here will tell me that the temperature's creeping up, and I'll go and check this little meter here, and yep, sure enough, this little indicator here is dropped right back, as you can see it at the moment. And you go, oh, okay, the gas has gone off, so you fire it up again, and she heads back up. So we had quite a number of, well, we had a few times where the gas blew out because there were lots of wind around. So it's got a multi-purpose facet to it. It does warn us, and it does let me know what the temperature is. Upshot of all this on the trip, we had a very successful trip. We had over 40 degrees Celsius for the 3 days that we were travelling down to Victoria, through till we went down to Canberra actually, and we did a couple of days. And when we're driving south from here, the fridge here, this is the western side of the van. So in the afternoon, when the temperature's at its worst, it's very hot, and it's been hot for days. So as I say, 42s and 43 degrees Celsius. This thing, the worst I got to was this got to about 7 or 8 degrees when we stopped and had lunch, and it was just, you're trying to cool. It's at the limits that the fridge can operate at. Over 40 degrees, they just don't operate very efficiently. But 7's fine. It was only for a short period while we stopped, or it would recover, by when we got where we were going, it would pull it back down again. So that's not an issue. That I can see. It's not a problem. It wasn't any issue for us. We didn't have any issues with any of the food. So yeah, good bonus. That is a good thing. It also takes the load off the charger, because it's trying to bang 17 amps in continuously into the battery if this fridge is constantly running, which it doesn't. And in those conditions, yes, it was running all the time, but the rest of the time, it doesn't need to continuously charge. It just needs to make sure that the battery's topped up. So in the van here, we fitted a DC to DC converter. I've replaced this top unit here. This was a C-Tech charger. Since I've had the van in 2 years, we've been through 2 C-Tech chargers. Last time failed under warranty, but unless I could I had to take the projector charger back to the dealer I bought it from, which was totally impractical. It failed on me by the time I got to Canberra. And I didn't have, the dealer wasn't in Canberra, clearly, which is absolutely appalling warranty for C-Tech to offer. Very bad, and 2 of them to fail within 12 months. When I bought the van, the guy had put in a new charger, and he showed me the receipt. And I know it was brand new. A week before I bought it, because the previous one had died, and that lasted less than 12 months. And then I replaced it, and it died in 6 months. So I bought a projector. So this is a projector unit. It went right through summer, no dramas, worked perfectly. So that's the mains charger, the big one on the top. Bottom one down there is the DC to DC charger. So it's a 25 amp, 9 to 15 volts in. Now that's important, that it can operate down to 9 volts. It's this thing will monitor, even on a new car, it will monitor the state of the battery from the charging vehicle. Switches on. You can see at the moment it's got 2 lights on. You can probably see down there. That's telling me the solar's connected. And there's another green light there that tells you when the car's connected. So, but it puts out up to 25 amps to maintain the AGM batteries at up to 14.5 or whatever it is. It takes, it's a multi-stage charger. It takes up to 14.5 volts roughly. Then it drops it back down and eventually sits at 13.65. And in fact, you can see that doing this at the moment. If you check up here, 13.64, 65. It's drawing around 200 milliamps. Now, this little meter I put in was to tell me how we were going. Each day. I didn't know how much we used, how much battery power we used, etc. So in here, that's telling me the battery capacity. I've got 210 amp hours available. That's 100%. You set this up, you tell it what size battery you've got, and it monitors the current in and current out. So I've got 100% of the battery available to me, and I'm currently drawing 210 milliamps to run the couple of lights. That's also going. So what this will do is, if I check this first thing in the morning before I've got any sun, and I'm non-powered, for example, the worst case I got to, this number got to about 82%. So I discharged my batteries down to 82% running light. It was all just lights really. That's fans. We did run fans. We did run the TV. I think the night we watched a couple of movies one night, and we had the lights on, etc. And we got down to about 82-83%. So it will tell me, this will tell me what percentage of battery I've used or got left. So 82%, I knew I'd used 18% of my battery. You're not supposed to take AGMs below 50%. So that's good. Never got anywhere close to that. And this will tell you how many amp hours you've used if you select this. Great little meter. Good product. So I'll put that in so that I had some idea about how we were tracking. So I had no idea what we used in certain, certain conditions. So that's a good little gadget to put in. So there's a meter up here, and down in the battery compartment down the back here, there's a current sensing bar down there that monitors everything going in and everything coming out of the battery. So there we go. The fridge worked very well. As I say, re-insulated around it. Worst case I got to on the hottest days was 7 degrees. 7.5 degrees it got up to, I think. I don't think I got any worse than that. And it did take a long time to pull that back down. Once I got down to those, once I got up to that temperature, it was very difficult for it to recover. It's a fold-up solar panel we use, supposedly 200 amp hours, but realistically something in the order, well, it only puts out about 9.5 amps, so that's only about 120 watts. So yeah, that's what you get with Chinese. They're also very heavy, but hey, can't argue about the price. It works great, does everything I need it to do. Around the back of the van here, which I think I've showed you before, we've got a solar controller up here that came with that fold-up solar panel. That's me backup solar. The DC charger I showed you inside maintains the battery. But if it's overcast, this is a lot less overheads. The projector or any of those dual solar mains, towing things have got a lot of overheads. They draw over 0.5 amp just to run them, so not the most efficient thing. So what I do is I've got this so I can select that one. I can run that and with very little overhead and get a higher current to the batteries during periods when it's not nice and sunny. Worst case was, I think we'd recovered every day by 10:30, maybe 11 o'clock. I don't think it ever gotten worse than that. Also fitted a couple of fans in here, which you can see up here. There's in between these little elements here, I just fitted a couple of 65mm fans, and they just blow air up from bottom to the top. That's all it needs. I didn't mount any big fans. It's just to keep the airflow across these elements. On the Avenue, you've got two vents you can open, which is great. I don't need to run these when the I don't need to run these at night. It's fine. I only need to run them. Where they really came into their own was when you pulled up during the day and it was very hot. You switched these fans on and they kept that Venturi effect going through up there, and that they made a big difference. So a very good idea. A lot of people put fans on their fridges. Absolute, given you should do that. Don't know why it's not standard, but I think it is on new vans now. I think it's pretty normal to put a chimney in. Here's the insulation, as you can see. I've re-insulated around both sides and up the top. So yeah, sorry, going to be fingering away there. So yes, that was those were the things I did, and completely successful. Completely successful. I can't say enough good things about doing that. I certainly would not move to a compressor fridge because of the need to have significantly greater DC available and a huge amount of solar, particularly if the weather's not kind. You've got to have a minimum of 300 amp hours of battery minimum, I would suggest, and probably 400 watts of solar to maintain to run the fridge, because they're generally a bigger fridge than these units. So yes, some people swear by them, but hey, the cost of putting in lithium, because really you're carrying a huge amount of weight. To put 300 amp hours of AGMs in is a lot of weight you're adding to the van. So, and as I said, 210 amp hours that I have here was more than adequate, and we were away for 3 months, and it kept up with all of our demands. We didn't even get close to using 50%, and there's quite a lot of lights in the van and on the outside, so didn't run them unnecessarily. But even when we did, there were nights when we had left a lot of lights on, and I just did that purposely to see what was the worst case. And running a television which draws around 5 amps, we watched a couple of movies on more than one night, and I still, as I say, fully recovered. The solar totally recovered by 10:30, 11 o'clock. Even on an overcast day, it might have been till 12 maybe, but that was all. So there was no problems keeping up with our usage at all. So quite successful, the fridge. Thoroughly recommend doing those changes. Good idea to add the thermostat control on if you do this, for sure. I did modify another friend of mine's fridge, and he did a 2-hour drive away. He had the same problem. He had about 6 meters of wire running around, and even went through a cigarette lighter plug, which is ridiculous. The fridge actually, we found a cigarette lighter plug and socket that the DC went through. That is totally useless. You can't draw 20 amps or 15 amps through a cigarette lighter plug, and yet that fridge just didn't work. It was completely useless. Rewired it, same principle we did here, and he drove a 2 hours away, and when he got there, the fridge was at minus 22. So he was not impressed with that, because it froze all his beer. But that was the first time the fridge had ever worked when he was towing. So yeah, very successful. But yes, you got to. It really then needs the thermostat to make sure that you don't exceed, what's capable of doing. Anyway, look, works fine. It certainly works with this fridge. They may not all be 175 watt elements, which does help in for the tropical rating. But anyway, bit of a follow-up. There you go. Thought that might be of interest to anyone that wanted to know how these things performed. As I say, one of the hottest summers we've certainly experienced, and absolutely the worst situation you could get to test the fridge in, and if it only got to 7 or 7.5 degrees in the middle of the day, and yes, it took a long time to recover from that, but that's fine. That was absolutely worst case scenario. And I only had one little fan at the time when I did that trip. I was only running one fan, so when we stopped on the day, it got to about 7 or 8 degrees in the fridge. It just couldn't cope. The heat coming off the road was horrendous. The only place I could park was with the van facing west, so the back of the fridge was copping the afternoon sun. This was like 2 in the afternoon, 3. It was absolutely copping it, and I didn't even have the vents open. I had both the vents shut, and I just had one little fan running, which helps. But you know, it's just the worst situation you could imagine. And I'm happy with the fridge. If it performed that well, I have no problems with using a 3-way fridge. And it's, you know, I used, I think the first gas bottle lasted us about a month. So it's a lot easier to run a gas fridge, and your power requirements are very minimal when you run a gas fridge, and you know, you can stay off grid. We didn't use mains power, I think, unless we had to. There was places where we paid and got a powered site, so yeah, we plugged in. We didn't, but everywhere we tried to get unpowered, we got unpowered because we just didn't need mains power at all. So there you go, viewers. Hope you get some value out of that. That was the summary of the performance of that. If you need to know anything, stick some comments in. I randomly look at YouTube things to see what's there, and thanks for your comments. Those who have said that it was of benefit to them. I'm glad it helps some people. All right, that's it from me. See you later.